Booktube. Yeah, it's been a couple of minutes, but I think I'm back. Yeah, like I said, it's been a couple of minutes. It's been a little over 3 months since I posted a video. I kind of just disappeared for a little while. I accidentally took a break. It wasn't a planned, intentional break. If it was, I totally would have mentioned in my last video. It just kind of happened because, you know what? Life just kind of happens. What have I been up to? Yeah, so basically, I mentioned in my June wrap up, which I can't believe my June wrap up was my last video. Oh my gosh, guys, what is happening? But yeah, I mentioned that I was just getting over COVID. Um, Basically, after I finished filming that video, my voice just kept coming and going and coming and going, and it was an absolute nightmare. So I decided to give myself a few more weeks to not do anything and just recover. I COVID left me so unbelievably tired. You know, people talk about how tired it makes them feel and like that post COVID fatigue and slump. But until you've had it, like you do not appreciate how awful, how crap that is. I am thankfully I like my symptoms were really mild. For the most part, I was off work for just over a week. My work were really good about it, thankfully. So yeah, that was great. So yeah, I kind of gave myself essentially the rest of July off to just get over that. And then August, I didn't post anything in August either because I live in the Highlands of Scotland, and August was really nice. I spent like it was sunny, it was warm, and when you live in the Highlands of Scotland and the weather's nice outside, you take advantage. So I found myself that anytime I had like a couple of hours free to either film a video or do anything, I was like, I mean, I could spend a couple of hours inside filming and editing and uploading and all that jazz. Um, or I could grab my book and I could grab a blanket or one of the or my folding chair thing, and I could be sitting out in the garden. So I chose to be out in the garden. My neighbors do think I'm weird enough as it is that maybe next summer I'll film outside, but I drew the line at that this summer. Like I'm easing them in. Like every year they learn that I'm just that little bit weirder. Um, so yeah, I wasn't quite ready to film and talk to the camera outside in front of all my neighbors. So yeah, so August, I was too busy taking advantage of the fact that Scotland got summer. Scotland occasionally gets a summer, and yeah, you just got to roll with it and take it. You can't. It's very much use it or lose it because it's so fragile. Yeah, and then the first week in September, I went to Italy with a friend. I visited her family, her parents, and had an absolutely wonderful, wonderful time. I sat on a beach for a week straight. I read 4 books, which was pretty much like I think that was the total amount of books I read in July, and like so all the books I read in July I read that same total in a week sitting on a beach in Italy. It was glorious. It was like 29, 30 degrees Celsius. It was beautiful. Yeah, and then I was like, right, okay, I'm gonna film like a summer like like a summer wrap up, and I was all geared to like start filming again, and then a tragedy happened. Um, I got a phone call one Saturday from my dad using my mum's phone. One of the most terrifying experiences you will find is my family, they only ever phone when it's bad news anyway. So when my mum's phoning, I'm already going, okay, what's wrong? And then my dad's voice comes out, pure panic. Um, Basically, so I have 2 cats. I've got Maisie, who you occasionally see in videos, and I've got Skimbleshanks, who lives with my parents. Um, I unfortunately had to make the heartbreaking decision to put Skimbleshanks to sleep. Um, Catastrophic. Oh, that's a terrible pun, and I did not mean to make it, but that's what they called it. It was a catastrophic heart failure. It came on very, very quickly. He was only suffering for a little while. Um, there, we could have continued with treatment, but at essentially the vet's recommendation, the treatment would have it would have just caused further suffering for him. So I made both the hardest and easiest decision I've ever made to end his suffering, and he was put to sleep. That kind of sent me into a bit of a depression. I really didn't want to do anything for a couple of weeks. So I'm finally feeling a lot better. I'm at the point where I can once again think about Skimbleshanks without tearing up, although I might, I'm just saying, guys. But yeah, I can think of all the happy thoughts again, and all the good memories I have of him. I had him for good, almost 11 years, so, you know, he wasn't a very old man, but he wasn't the youngest cat either. So yeah, I have been reading plenty during this time. Yeah, like I said, like the summer I was outside, books have very much the last few weeks been a source of comfort for me. So I'm finally ready to come back and start filming. Oh, another thing you might notice is background's a different color. Yay! I had a really nice conversation with my landlord where I basically insulted his wallpaper and asked if I could redecorate, and he told me to make myself comfortable, combined with the look of like, seriously, why haven't you done this already? So I am in the process of redecorating my living room. This is what the old paper used to look like. And now we've gone green, and it feels so much nicer in this room. So much nicer. It's not finished. I've still got 2 walls left to finish, but yeah. Eventually, as time goes on, you'll see bookshelves appear here. And I think this is essentially going to become like my usual filming corner. Yeah, so that's me. I'm back. And that's sort of like a rough overview of what I've been up to in the last couple of months. But I thought, in light of what happened with Skimbleshanks, I had been planning one of the first videos to do was going to be the BookTube Cat Tag, and I was going to do it for both Maisie and Skimbleshanks. But I think I'm just going to dedicate this video to Skimbleshanks, and we're just going to talk about Skimbleshanks for the BookTube Cat Tag. I might do this again in another year or two for Maisie, but for now, Skimbleshanks gets to shine. So, without further ado, the BookTube Cat Tag. So the first prompt is to tell us about your cat. So Skimbleshanks was this absolutely beautiful giant black cat. He was such a character. I got him on my 21st birthday. Was it my 21st? I'm 22. No, I got him on my 22nd birthday. We lived by the railway station in Bo'ness at the time when I got him, so it just felt right to name him Skimbleshanks. Cats the Musical is one of my favourite musicals. It was the very first one I saw, and yeah, he lived up to his namesake. He is such a character. He was very cheeky, very mischievous, so loving. He'd often like just go out and roam about for a couple of days. We're fairly certain he had like 3 or 4 families. We were not his only family, but he was so lovable. He's so sociable. One of the main reasons he didn't live with me, is that when I lived in Edinburgh, I lived in a flat that didn't really allow pets. Well, the first flat I lived in allowed pets, and he lived with me for a little while, but he really wanted to be an outdoor cat. He was not content to just be an indoor cat. And I lived on I think I was on the 3rd floor. So that's UK 3rd floor, American 4th floor. Yeah, I couldn't let him out the window. He tried to get out the window several times. So eventually we made the decision that for the time that whilst I was in that flat, he would go back and live with my parents. My parents had 3 cats at the time anyway, which, like, I was living with them when I first got Skimbles, so it just made sense. He already knew those cats. We knew they all got along, so it just made sense. I then moved into a flat that didn't allow pets, and then when I finally moved up to Inverness, I adopted Maisie. And Maisie and Skimbleshanks really don't get along. Skimbleshanks wants to be Maisie's friend. Maisie does not want friends of any sort. Maisie is a one. She is a one cat. She's a one cat per household kind of cat. They one of the few times they met, we had to take Skimbles to the vets because she clicked him like right here beside the eye. Uh, I think it was like a couple of millimeters to the side, and he would have been a eye patch cat. Um, but I wasn't. It wasn't to be. He wasn't to come live with me permanently. He continued living with my parents, getting along with their cats, being the neighborhood bully at one point. He was he was mischievous and lovely. Um, it's not that hard as a cat mom to make the decision to let him continue living with my parents because ultimately I knew he was happy. I go down to visit. I At the time I went down to visit often enough. Um, you know, I still got all the attention. They all got ignored when I visited, so he still knew me. He still knew he was loved. He was completely spoiled. But yeah, that was Skimbleshanks. The next, the second question is, what would be your cat's favorite book? He's called Skimbleshanks, guys. His favorite book, with the exception of ultimately his favorite book is a book he can sit on. If I can find it, I'm going to insert a picture here. That is Skimbleshanks sitting on my book, demanding attention because how dare I read at the dinner table. But if it's not a book he can sit on, it would have to be Old Possum's Book for Practical Cats because that is I think he would enjoy learning about his namesake and all of the other cats and all the mischief they get up to, and I imagine he would have been inspired. He was so close to being a Mr. Mistopheles. But yeah, Skimbleshanks did just that little bit better. So the third prompt is use the first letter in book titles to spell your cat's name. Again, I'm going to insert a picture. There's too many books to go through. Skimbleshanks is not a short name, so here are all the Here you go. Here are all of the books. Yeah. So the fourth one is, what is your cat's relationship with books? Skimbleshanks was ambivalent towards books at best. Like most cats, I imagine, he enjoyed sitting on a book. The best kind of book was a book that he could use as a bed. Or a book that he could sit on and demand attention from me instead of the book getting the attention. Yeah. He was not a massive fan of books because, if I'm reading, I'm not petting and loving him. Right? I imagine that goes true with a lot of cats. The fifth... Okay, so the fifth and sixth prompt in this tag, I'm going to combine because they are, what is your favourite book with a cat? And find a book on your shelves with a cat on the cover. And I first saw this prompt, my first thought was this book. I have scoured my shelves. I have almost 600 books and I have scoured them all, and very few have cats. Almost none. What the heck, guys? What is with fantasy? Why are we obsessed with dogs and wolves in fantasy? Like, we need more cats in fantasy. Okay? If anyone has made it this far in the video, and if you have any recommendations for cats in fantasy, please leave them for me because there's just not enough of them. Cats, apparently, just don't get the love that they deserve. And it's wrong. It's just wrong, guys. But yeah, anyway, my favourite book that has a cat, and thankfully I happen to own it. And it does indeed have a cat on the cover, and that is The Redemption of Althalis by David Eddings. I know David Eddings isn't spoken about that often on BookTube, at least not that I see. And when he is spoken about, it tends to be the Bulgariad. Now, don't get me wrong, that probably is, like, of all the Eddings that I've read, that would be my favourite. But The Redemption of Althalis is, in itself, something really wonderful. It is very similar to all of the rest of his work. I'm just going to put it out there. David Eddings is the king of telling the same story You know, he has a formula and he works for it. He makes it work for him. So I don't know. I've still really enjoyed everything I've read from him. He was probably one of the first authors, alongside like Robin Hobb and Raymond Feist, that got me hooked on fantasy. Um, but yeah, the redemption of Althalis is basically about a thief who sort of like unknowingly, not unknowingly, but he agrees to um, basically steal a book without kind of knowing all the details and everything he should have. This book is found in the house at the end of the world. Basically, when he gets there, he finds not only a book but a cat. That cat on his shoulder, called Emerald. Well, he calls the cat Emerald. Um, the cat is actually the. I think it turns out she's actually the sister of the god who owns the book, but she's trapped in cat form right now. So I know she's not technically a cat, but I can't remember if it's like for the majority of the book or for all of the book. She's a cat, so it totally counts. It's then basically Althalis then tries to leave and turns around and basically finds himself trapped in the room with no door. The door has disappeared. And by the time he manages to leave, he's basically been taught to read. And yeah, we've learned about, in true Edding style, we've learned about a god that there's an evil god that's out to destroy the world essentially, and we then gather a ragtag motley crew and do what we've got to do and try and save the world. It does have a really interesting mode of transportation in this one. It was probably one of the first books that I came across that had like a unique way of transport. It's not necessarily unique anymore, but it was one of the first sort of like non-traditional, unexpected ways of transporting, where they use the house and they open different doors and different doors go to different areas. So I don't think it's quite portal fantasy, because they're still in the same world. This house kind of helps transport them to different parts of the world. It has been quite a while since I've read this, so I can't remember exactly how it works. I just know that it worked really nicely, and I was really intrigued and I really liked it. Yeah. So yeah, The Redemption of Althalis. It's also a standalone, okay? So I'm just gonna put it out there. It is a little bit chunky, but it's a standalone, and we all know that those are, they're not that common. They're not that rare anymore, but at the same time, it's a nice self-contained standalone that, if you were to read like all of the Bulgarian or all of the Elenium, it's still that little bit shorter, despite how chunky it is. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Prompt number 7 is to find a book in your TBR that has the word cat in the title or cat in it. This one was a stretch. This one is a stretch. Okay? I have like 60 plus, possibly closer to 70, 80 physical books on my TBR. None of them have cat in the title. And as far as I'm aware, none of them have cats in them. Particularly, at least not cats as characters, and there's nothing in the blurbs that I'm aware of. I did not sit and read every single blurb, but nothing sort of like shot out with me as, oh yeah, I think that one has a cat in it. I do have one with a cat on a cat on the cover though, so it's a bit of a stretch, but here we are. And okay, the first thing you need to know about this one is the reason I bought it is because of its cover. This was a cover buy. I did not buy this because it had a pretty cover. I bought it because it has a kind of ridiculous cover, and it is and it is a cover that is just so of its time. This book was released in the mid-80s, and this cover is just so retro and just screams 80s fantasy sci-fi. So that is Warrior Woman by Marion Zimmer Bradley. It has a tiger. Tigers are cats. It totally counts, okay? That's where we're going. This is as far as we could go with this tag. This is basically about a warrior woman who is a gladiator and is all fierce and powerful, and she is a slave who is basically fighting for her freedom. So I'm hoping that despite what this cover looks like, it's actually like kick-ass feminist prose. I found this in Leakey's, which is an incredible secondhand bookstore we have up here in Inverness, and I just I mean, how could I not buy this, right? So I'm kind of just saving this for yeah, I'm a mood reader. I'm saving this for when the mood strikes, and it's really thin, so it's not even 200 pages. So even if it is terrible, I won't waste too much time on it. But I'm really intrigued, and I just think I'm going to have an absolute blast reading this. Yeah, that's me. The last prompt is to tag a bunch of people. I don't know exactly who has pets and who doesn't on BookTube. So I know this is the cat tag, but you can substitute cat for pet of your choice or just pet in general. Yeah, if this appeals to you, please do it. Consider yourself tagged. Don't wait for me. I wasn't tagged in this one. I just did it anyway because, you know, what's life if we don't do the things we like? But yeah, like I say, this tag is dedicated to the late great Skimbleshanks. And yeah, I'm back. Yeah, hope you guys have a lovely reading time. And until then, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.